Today I'm going to be talking a little bit about the software decomposition that's required by the IEC 62304 standard. So as part of this standard, you need to decompose your software or your software for your medical device into a hierarchy of components that they call software items. So software item, it can be many things. It can be the whole system, but it can also be potentially as granular as a single function or class in the software system. Really, they say any identifiable component of the system. So one question we often get is, how granular should this decomposition get? And to talk about that, I think it's important to understand the purpose of this decomposition. So one of the main purposes is to help with the risk analysis. So once we've decomposed our system into a hierarchy of components, we'll go through and ask the question, what risks can originate in each of these different parts of the system? And so there's other utility in doing this composition beyond that, just as far as aiding engineers in understanding the system, but that's kind of the main focus, is the risk analysis. And so as a result, when you're considering splitting up a software item, maybe you've gone as far as whole directories of source files, and you're saying, oh, should we break it down into individual files or individual functions? Like, is that worth doing? I think the way to approach it is to consider, would that help with the risk analysis? Like, are there risks that we want to consider that may originate in this particular function or that particular function or that file or that file? If not, if that's unlikely and it doesn't aid in the risk analysis, then I'd suggest not breaking it down further. Because the reality is, if you break it down too much, the whole thing becomes much less useful. Like, if you have too much information, your model or your analysis is not going to help, because you'll be so overwhelmed with the amount of information. So we tend to like to start with a relatively rough decomposition, and then decompose it more in conjunction with our risk analysis. And if we feel like there are risks originating in one area, or also risk control measures that are implemented by a particular area, we'll split those out with more and more detail. One other thing I would point out about the software decomposition is that this is a view of a complicated system. So it's kind of like architectural drawings of a real building. You need a lot of different types of drawings of the same building, because it's too complicated to be captured in a single view. This decomposition is like that as well. Like, there's likely many other views that may be useful for different types of analysis. This isn't like the one true view. What I would say, though, is each of these nodes in this view, the view that's required by 62304, should be an identifiable part of the system. So it's nice to trace it back to source code or directories, or possibly GitHub repositories if you have a larger project, versus having it be this very blurry concept that might not be easily identified in the code.